Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, the Bay Area's premier author interview program. And today, through the magic of long-distance phones and stuff like that, we're going to talk to Julia Glass. We missed her, when the hardcover of this book was out, and then we missed her again when she ran through these environs talking about the paperback edition of I See You Everywhere. It's a novel. Anchor Books is published by Random House. Welcome.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be back.
So nice to have you on board. There's a line in the review from USA Today. One doesn't read so much as sink into a Julia Glass novel, lulled into an escapist reverie by her mastery of a certain upper middle-class milieu. You do sink into it.
Well, that's a compliment. I read that review, and I pictured one of my books as a big red velvet couch, which I've always wanted to own. I haven't found it yet, but if my books could be like that, then I'm happy.
Yeah, I think it's a tremendous compliment, because when one gets finished with this book, especially, one feels that one has been through two lives in a very intimate, knowing way, and it's a very, very moving kind of experience to read this book. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. It was a hard book to write. In some ways, it is my most personal book, and also a book that I started way before my first novel, 3 Junes, and abandoned through 2 books and came back to. I was determined to finish it, and I did, and it felt like a real accomplishment. So to have it out there now and to get good reviews for it feels very satisfying.
Well, what we're sinking into here is something that, as a man, I continue to find inscrutable. The relationship, the love, the emotion between sisters. Mm-hmm. It's really mysterious to me. Is it as mysterious to other people, or is it just Jim Foster's problem?
It's just Jim Foster. That's all, just Jim Foster. No. Well, Jim, people say that, and I mean, I'm certainly willing to believe, and obviously it must be true, that the sister relationship is unique, and I wouldn't have devoted an entire book to it if I didn't feel that it's a fascinating and very meaty kind of relationship. But I have to say that I'm sure brothers and sisters have similar relationships. I am not a believer that sisters have some superior and deeper relationship than brothers do, although obviously I'm not a brother and I also don't have a brother, so I can't say. But in 3 Junes, my first novel, brothers are very much at the core of that. And now in this book, it's a more intimate book. It's really about these 2 sisters, who they are, their struggle to understand each other. They're so different, and yet they understand that the bond they have is irreplaceable. They
certainly are different. You write, Louisa is 4 years older than I am, and that's something we should point out, that the narrative voice changes from chapter to chapter. One chapter will be Louisa's voice, and the next chapter will be Clement's voice, right?
Yes.
Louisa, it says here, so Clem is writing, is 4 years older than I am, also nearly 4 inches shorter, and about 4 decades more full of opinions. I love that. Sometimes when she enters a room, it feels like half the air has been sucked out. I know a lot, but around her, it's never enough. We are as different as white chocolate and seaweed, the Milky Way and a tropical reef. For one thing, I do not know how she or anyone lives in New York City. For another, I do not know how she or anyone can suspend belief long enough to turn up married. So there they are, chocolates and seaweed.
That gets quoted a lot.
The message of the book, though, that is, despite these kinds of, fundamental, incredible differences, they support one another. They help one another. They love one another. And that, to me, is the mystery. I mean, if you caught these two in a room, they could be arguing like heck. But then if something comes up that's tremendously important, tragic, and difficult, they are there for each other. And that's great.
Well, they're there for each other, and they can also be quite brutally honest with each other in the way that I don't think friends sometimes can.
Mm-hmm.
I think siblings are capable of a kind of honesty that, delivered by someone you're not related to by blood, would be unforgivable. And that's one aspect of siblinghood and sisterhood in particular that I do explore in this book.
I See You Everywhere is a masterpiece. It takes you in and you can't escape. But you love it. We'll show why you love it when we come back.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Today is Julia Glass Day on Conversations on the Coast, the wonderful national best-selling winner of the National Book Award novelist, talking about her latest novel, I See You Everywhere, which is now in an Anchor Books trade paperback edition, and so you have no excuse not to buy it. No more price argument out there. The New York Times Book Review liked it a lot, and in part they wrote, rich, intricate, and alive with emotion. An honest portrait of sister love, brave and forgiving. I like the forgiving part of that.
I do too.
Because that's something else that these wonderful sisters do. They forgive. And
they do. I mean, it begins at a place where the two of them are estranged, particularly the older one from the younger one. And I think we should also say that it takes place over 25 years, beginning
right.
when these two women are in their early 20s, both of them away from home, one still in school, one struggling to find her way as an artist. The younger one, of course, is more directed towards science, and she's more of an adventurer.
Well, and she's directed totally to the outdoors.
Yes.
To mammals and birds and things like that. Their parents are quite different. The father seems to me to be a rather straightforward kind of guy. He's totally involved in things like ships and regattas and hurricanes and stuff like that. But the mother is a bit more eccentric. She belongs to something called the Hunt Club. Now
She's the master of foxhounds.
Yes, the Hunt Club ought to have died a dignified death decades ago, but Mom and her richer compatriots persevere in carving out a patch of ersatz country. Tuesdays and Saturdays, fall and spring, 36 riders thread their way through the woods and fields, endangered on all sides by grandiose housing developments and gratuitously straightened roads. Long before the dawn fog evaporates, our mother's oversized tally-ho can be heard at the self-service mobile on Route 14, the Windjammer Clam Hut on Penequisset Point, and even, I bet, if the wind is from the east, as far inland as the Pilgrim's Pride Mall near the overpass on the Roger Williams Turnpike. Kids, we're talking Rhode Island, right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, and there's no fox. It's just the odor that they spread on the grass. Is that the way this fox hunt goes?
Well, you might find a fox there. I have to tell you, I live in a suburb of Boston, and we're being invaded by red foxes.
Are you?
Yes, we are. You see them just trotting down the road at night and during the day, and it's odd. Huh. They're very cute. They're really not much bigger than cats. Well,
not much bigger than cats. Are you out chasing them and your kids or whatever?
I am not, but I should tell you, Jim, that I do now have a pet foxhound, and this is relatively new.
Ah, wow.
He's semi-blind. He was born with cataracts, and that's why we have him, because he can't hunt. He'd bump into trees.
Oh, okay.
But he doesn't even see these foxes when they cross our paths. Yeah. We should talk about the book.
one of the things is that this book, I See You Everywhere, is seamless in the way it develops. So one cannot, in my opinion, really talk about subplots, going off someplace on a tangent and then coming back. But there is a background story that I can't get out of my mind. It involves Aunt Lucy, dear Aunt Lucy, whom Clem is being a companion to in her dying days. But then you get to tell the backstory on Aunt Lucy. Can you share that? This is about her and her sister Nettie and the baby.
Yes, there's a big family secret there.
Yeah.
And it is, that's in the opening chapter of the book. And I should say, Jim, that it's interesting to hear you describe it as seamless because this book began with 3 separate short stories that I wrote in the early 90s about Louisa and Clem, and then decided to develop it into a full book, alternating voices going over these 25 years. And I decided to begin with this story that was very rich in their family lore. In other words, what they share in their bloodlines. And that aunt is actually a great aunt.
That's right, a great aunt.
In her late 90s, but still quite vigorous. And the younger sister has a job of, watching over her in what turns out to be her last summer. And that is what brings the 2 sisters back together after their estrangement, is that's the summer of Aunt Lucy, as it were, and the secret that Clem discovers about her, which reverberates through the entire family, of course.
One of the other things that Clem and the great Aunt Lucy do together is they shop the malls, and they keep coming home with crazy stuff. It's really wonderful.
She buys kitchen appliances.
Yes.
Rachel Ray would be proud of her.
Yeah,
yes.
Juicers and bread makers and all that kind of stuff. It's just absolutely fantastic.
Yes, she calls it newfangling her life.
Another thing that I think plays a major part in this story is place. I See You Everywhere takes us to different milieus. And we'll explain this to you a little more when we come back.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
This is Conversations on the Coast. The guest today is the wonderful, beautiful writer Julia Glass, talking about I See You Everywhere, concerning which the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette opined, that's a big word, I get that out of a British novel, Glass is the Edith Wharton for the 21st century. Now there's a little burden for you, Julia. We call that an ego snack. Glass is the Edith Wharton for the 21st century. Wharton wrote more than 48 books in her lifetime. American literature could use a few more from Glass. Well, what are you doing?
I just turned in my 4th book to my publisher.
Oh, thank you very much for following the advice of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. You're a good woman. That's excellent.
I'm very obedient when it comes to book critics. I do just what they tell me to do.
Before we talk about place, I think that these sisters get involved with some strange men. There's a fellow called Tidy, whom they get involved with because of their mother, and another fellow, a Monterey guy, called Zip. Where do these people come from? I mean, Tidy, there's a absolutely wonderful, funny part of the book. Tidy steals something?
Yes, he commits a cross-country dog napping.
Yes.
He steals a small pack of foxhounds and drives them from Rhode Island to Carmel, California. And the sisters have to act as Sherlock Holmes together and track down the houndsman with the hounds.
But the whole
that's
whole
a story
thing
I wrote. I had a lot of pleasure in the comic. There's aspect of that story. There's a lot of sadness in this book. But
yes.
I like to think there's a lot of laughter too.
Well, that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about the dog napping of the hounds, because the way that's resolved over wine and cheese near the pool is, so typically Carmel. I laugh myself silly. Tell us, Tidy is a strange fellow. he works for the sister's mom, right?
Yes, she's a master of foxhounds, and he is, he's what would be called the kennelman. He looks after the hounds, and he helps her hunt the hounds. But he's also, he's kind of a ne'er-do-well, impoverished aristocrat, and so he's on a social par with the members of that family.
Yeah.
He's almost like a family mascot. He comes up again later in the book, hanging out for dinner when Louisa goes home with her husband to her parents' house for a weekend.
That's right. He certainly does. And then Zip is a kind of wonderful California-type guru.
He's very sort of new agey.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
with an edge.
Many boyfriends. Well, Clem is very restless, and both sisters are looking for love as well as looking for a way to satisfy their passions in this book. And on one level, I thought of this book as I was writing it as if the two sisters are on a train that's traveling through a countryside, and you see many different episodes out the window, and among these passing scenes are all these different men. And, they settle down for a while with some, and then relationships rupture, and, without giving away the ending, I think,
No, let's not do that. But, we won't. That was my next point, that these two women run...
I'm giving away my own ending.
No, don't do that. But my next point was that these two women do indeed run through an awful lot of men. Really.
Now, Jim, I would say this is 25 years, and I'd say each one, maybe fewer than half dozen are mentioned. I wouldn't say that's so bad.
No, you're right. When you put it out over 25 years, it ain't so bad. No, it's okay. It's okay. But the beautiful thing is the way you handle the different places that that their lives are lived in. Just absolutely wonderful. Particularly the last part of the book where Clem is in Wyoming, is it? Mm-hmm. And trying to take care of the grizzlies, trying to help them
she's
survive.
A wildlife biologist working on the grizzly bear project to revive the population of the endangered grizzly bear.
The interesting part about your writing in that part of the book is that the place takes on as much meaning, and you are, it seems to me, as much involved with the place in that part of the book as you are with the characters, and certainly as much involved with the animals as you are with the humans.
Right. And, place exerts an enormous influence on Clem, especially there.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I love reading books in which place is so strong that it's almost like another character.
Well, that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens. The other thing is that there's also the sense of the difference between the East and the West and the North and the South. I mean, this book is a great, great pleasure. If you missed it in hardcover, you have no more excuse. You go out and you get I See You Everywhere by Julia Glass. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.